The red dust of salt draw had a way of getting into everything: boots, hair, lungs. It settled on windowsills like dried blood, turned the water in wash basins rusty, and made the whole world taste of iron and regret. Hannah Quinn wiped the grit from her eyes as she saddled her father's mare in the pre-dawn darkness, trying not to think about how the old saddle still smelled like him: leather oil and tobacco, sweat and determination. 3 weeks since they'd pulled Patrick Quinn's body from the collapsed shaft at Pike's copper mine. 3 weeks since the world had tilted sideways and refused to right itself. "You sure about this, Hannah?" Noah's voice cracked from the barn door. At 12, her brother was all knees and elbows, growing too fast for his clothes and too young for the worry that had settled permanent-like in his eyes. "Got no choice." She cinched the saddle tight, checking the rifle in its scabbard. "Doc Morrison won't extend credit past end of month. Your medicine." Noah's cough interrupted her, wet and rattling like pebbles in a tin can. The consumption had started mild last winter, but the dry heat and mine dust had turned it mean. Without the laudanum tincture and willow bark tea, the boy couldn't sleep through the night. "I can ride with you," he offered, though they both knew he'd not make it past Coyote Ridge without collapsing. "Need you here watching the homestead." Hannah forced a smile, adjusting the rope on the 3 steers they had left. Prime beef, worth maybe $60 if the buyers at Lordsburg were feeling generous. Enough for medicine, flour, and maybe, just maybe, a payment on the banknote Pike's First National had been pressing since Pa died. The sunrise painted salt draw in shades of amber and ash as Hannah led the cattle down the main trail. The town was already stirring smoke from breakfast fires. The ring of the blacksmith's hammer, the distant shouts from the mine that never slept. She kept her hat low, avoiding the stares of folks who'd known her father, who whispered about the Quinn bad luck and wondered how long before Pike got his hands on their water rights. The trail to Lordsburg wound through Devil's Canyon, a natural funnel between red rock walls that had sheltered outlaws and ambushers since before the territory got its name. Hannah kept her hand near the Colt on her hip, Pa's voice echoing in her memory: "Canyons like a snake, beautiful to look at, deadly if you're not careful." She was 2 miles into the canyon when the hair on her neck stood up. The cattle felt it too, their eyes rolling white, hooves dancing nervous patterns in the dust. The morning had gone too quiet. No bird calls, no lizards scuttling over rocks, just the sound of her own heartbeat and, "Hold there, miss!" The voice came from above, from the shadows where the canyon walls created natural blind spots. Hannah's hand found her pistol grip as 3 men materialized from the rocks, moving with the lazy confidence of predators who knew their prey was cornered. "Just passing through," she called out, voice steadier than her pulse. "Got business in Lordsburg." The lead man, beard gray as canyon dust, smiled without warmth. "That's so. Well, seems there's a toll for using this road today." "Since when?" Hannah's mare shifted beneath her, sensing the tension. "Since right about now," he gestured to his companions, who spread out in practiced formation. One carried a Spencer rifle, the other a shotgun that had seen better days. "How about you climb down nice and slow? Let us inspect what you're hauling." Hannah's mind raced. 3 armed men, canyon walls on both sides, nowhere to run with the cattle. Pa would have fought Pa had fought, right up until the mine swallowed him. But Pa was dead, and Noah needed medicine. She was reaching for the reins when a 4th voice cut through the morning air, sharp as a blade on whetstone. I'd think twice about that inspection. The newcomer stood on an outcrop 20 feet up, rifle casual in his hands but pointed in a direction that suggested casualties if anyone moved wrong. Native blood showed in his cheekbones and the black shine of his hair, but his eyes were gray as winter steel, a mixed blood, what the townfolks called a half-breed when they thought nobody was listening. "This ain't your concern, Crow," the bearded leader spat. "Take your Apache hide elsewhere before we decide to collect that bounty the Army's still offering." Elias Crow. Hannah had heard the name in whispers: scout, tracker, man who could read sign like scripture and find water where the maps showed only death. Also a man who'd ridden with killers, who'd guided soldiers to native camps, who carried more ghosts than any Christian soul should bear. Funny thing about bounties, Crow said, voice conversational as Sunday dinner. They require you to be alive to collect. 4 of us, 1 of you, the leader calculated. 3 of you, Crow corrected. Jones, there's been favoring his left side since he climbed down. Buckshot wound from Messiah, if I recall. Peters can't shoot worth spit with that scattergun at this range. And you... He shifted slightly, rifle never wavering. You're standing right where the canyon focuses sound. Makes a man easy to track. Also makes him easy to bury when the whole wall comes down. You're bluffing. Crow's smile was thin as paper. Miss Quinn, when I count to 3, you might want to cover your ears and hold tight to them cattle. Hannah's blood chilled. He knew her name. What are you? 1. The outlaws exchanged glances, uncertainty creeping into their postures. 2. Now wait, just a damned. 3. The explosion shook the canyon like God's own fist. Not from Crow's rifle, but from somewhere high above, where a charge had been set with careful precision. Rock and dirt cascaded down 50 yards behind the outlaws, sealing the narrow passage they'd used to enter the canyon. The thunder echoed and re-echoed, sending Hannah's cattle into a panicked dance. Through the dust and chaos, Crow had moved, ghost quick and silent. When the rumbling stopped, he stood 10 feet from the outlaws, rifle steady. Charges are set all along this stretch, he said quietly. Some for warning, some for burial. Want to guess which is which? The bearded leader's face had gone pale beneath the dirt. You're insane! Practical. Crow corrected. This canyon's seen enough blood. Take your men and climb out while you can still climb. For a moment, violence hung in the air like smoke. Then the leader spat in the dust, jerked his head at his men. This ain't over, Breed. It never is, Crow agreed. They scrambled up the rocks, vanishing into the maze of stone with curses and wounded pride. Hannah waited until the sounds faded before letting out the breath she'd been holding. You can lower the iron now. Miss Quinn, they won't be back today. She realized her Colt was in her hand, hammer cocked. Slowly, she eased it down, holstered it with shaking fingers. How did you? Those charges? Trap for bigger game. He slung his rifle over his shoulder, moved down the rocks with the sure-footed grace of a man who'd spent more time off trails than on them. Pike's been sending crews through here, mapping new routes for his copper wagons. Figured someone might try to use his own road against travelers. Up close, she could see the Apache in the angle of his jaw, the European in the gray eyes that seemed to catalog every detail and file it away for future reference. Dust and sun had weathered him into something hard and essential, like the desert itself. I didn't ask for help, she said, hating how young she sounded. Didn't offer it for you. He studied the cattle, the worn saddle, the patched dress that had seen too many washings. Your father was a decent man. Shame what happened at the mine. Accident, she said automatically. His eyes found hers, held them. Sure it was. The words hung between them like a challenge. Hannah felt heat rise in her cheeks, anger or shame. She couldn't tell which. You're saying different. I'm saying copper veins don't care who owns the land above them. And I'm saying a man who finds water where Pike wants to dig tends to have accidents. Her father's journal, hidden beneath the loose floorboard in the kitchen. His notes about the water table, about Pike's surveys encroaching on Quinn land, about the strangers who'd started appearing at the mine the week before he died. Prove it, she whispered. Crow reached into his vest, pulled out a folded paper. Found this on our friends back there. Figured they dropped it in their hurry to set up the ambush. Hannah unfolded it with trembling hands. Bank letterhead Pike's First National, an advance payment receipt for collection services, signed by Josiah Pike himself. Collection services. she read, voice hollow. Man's got away with words. Crow was already moving back toward the rocks. Trail to Lordsburg's clear now, but I'd take the South Fork after Miller's Creek. Less chance of meeting more collectors. Wait, the word escaped before she could stop it. Why help me? What's your angle? He paused, silhouetted against the morning sky. Maybe I don't like bullies. Maybe I owe your father a debt. Or maybe... He looked back, and for just a moment she saw something raw in those gray eyes. Something that looked like her own reflection. Maybe I'm tired of watching Pike bury decent folks. I can't pay you. Didn't ask you to. He started climbing, then stopped again. Word of advice, Miss Quinn, that receipt's worth keeping, but it's also worth dying for in Pike's eyes. Whatever you decide to do with it, decide fast. Then he was gone, vanished into the red rocks like smoke, leaving Hannah alone with her cattle and a piece of paper that felt heavy as a gravestone. She folded the receipt carefully, tucked it inside her bodice where it pressed against her ribs like a secret. The cattle lowed restlessly, eager to be away from the canyon and its echoes of violence. Come on then, she murmured, taking up the lead rope. Still got medicine to buy. But as she guided them toward Miller's Creek and the South Fork, Hannah Quinn knew something had changed in that canyon. The red dust still coated everything, still tasted of iron and regret. But now it tasted of something else too. Justice? Maybe. Or revenge. In Salt Draw. Sometimes they were the same thing. The sun climbed higher, baking the land into submission, somewhere in the rocks. A hawk cried out predator or prey, warning or promise. Hannah didn't look back. She had cattle to sell, medicine to buy, and a brother to save. The receipt burned against her skin. Elias Crow's words echoing in her mind, decide fast. The thing about decisions in the desert, they had a way of making themselves when you ran out of water. And the Quinn family well was running mighty dry. The morning sun had turned cruel by the time Hannah reached the Lordsburg stockyards. Her 3 steers stood patient in the dust, ribs showing through their hides like accusations. The receipt from Pike's bank pressed against her ribs, a constant reminder of the morning's near disaster. $20 a head. The buyer, a thin man named Garrett with tobacco stains on his vest, didn't even look up from his ledger. Take it or drive them back. They're worth $40 each, minimum. Hannah kept her voice level, though her hands wanted to shake. Prime beef, grass-fed. We're grass-fed. Garrett spat into the dust. Drought's been hard on everyone. Miss Quinn, 20's generous, considering what that her father was dead, that Pike held the note on their land, that she had no choice but to take whatever scraps they offered. The other buyers had already turned her away, claiming their pens were full or their funds committed elsewhere. Garrett was her last chance, and they both knew it. 25. She tried. 20. And that's only 'cause I respected your PA. He finally looked at her, eyes flat as old coins. Though maybe he should have been more careful about which holes he went digging in. The words hit like a slap. Hannah's hand moved toward her hip before she caught herself. My father's death was an accident. Sure it was. Garrett's smile was thin as wire. Just like Tom Martinez's accident last month, and Ben Cooper's the month before. Dangerous business. Mining. Even more dangerous when you've got water rights Pike wants. Then you know. I know to mind my own business. He pulled out a worn leather purse, counted out $60 in mixed bills and coins. 20 a head, final offer. Hannah stared at the money. $60. Enough for Noah's medicine for maybe 2 months. Not enough for the bank payment. Not enough to keep Pike's hands off their water rights. Not enough for anything but surviving another day. She reached for the money. A hand covered Garrett's before she could take it. Dark-skinned, scarred across the knuckles, attached to an arm in a worn cavalry coat. The lady's cattle are worth $40 a head in Tucson, Elias Crow said conversationally. course, that's a 3-day drive through Apache territory. But for someone who knows the safe passages... Garrett's face went pale. Crow, didn't see you there. Most people don't. Elias released the man's hand, stepped back just enough to include Hannah in the conversation. Interesting thing about the Tucson market. They're paying premium for good beef. Army contract for Fort Lowell. These cattle won't make it to Tucson. Garrett protested. Not with the Chiricahua raiding every They will if I guide them. Crow's gray eyes never left Garrett's face. Unless you'd like to reconsider your offer here. The stockyard had gone quiet. Other buyers drifted closer, sensing drama. Hannah felt the weight of their stares, the calculations behind their eyes, the half-breed scout and the dead miner's daughter, threatening to upset the careful balance of who got what and for how much. 30 ahead, Garrett said finally, and that's robbing myself blind. 35, Crow countered. You're not even her agent. I am now. He glanced at Hannah. If the lady agrees. She should refuse, should handle her own business, not rely on a stranger with Apache blood and a reputation dark as desert midnight. But Noah needed medicine, and pride was a luxury the Quinn family couldn't afford anymore. Agreed, she said quietly. Garrett's curse could have peeled paint, but he counted out $105, slapping each bill down like he was laying cards in a losing hand. There, and may you choke on it. Pleasure doing business. Crow touched his hat brim, a gesture so mockingly proper it drew nervous laughter from the crowd. Hannah gathered the money with steady hands, though her heart hammered against her ribs. As she turned to go, Garrett's voice followed her. You've made an enemy today, girl. Pike don't like people who upset his arrangements. Seems like Pike's got plenty of enemies already, she replied, not looking back. Outside, the sun hit like a hammer. Crow stood by her horse, checking the saddle with practiced hands. That was foolish, she said. Garrett will report this to Pike within the hour. Probably. He tightened a loose strap. Your cinch is wearing through. Need to replace it before it fails you. Why did you do that? He straightened, met her eyes. Your father helped me once. Found me half dead in Skeleton Canyon. Apache arrow in my shoulder and cavalry wanting to finish the job. Could have collected the bounty. Instead, he packed the wound and pointed me toward Mexico. He never mentioned. Wasn't the kind of man who talked about his good deeds. Crow pulled a folded map from his coat. Now, about that bank payment you're worried about. Hannah stiffened. How did you... Pike's charging 20% interest on mining families' loans, calling them in 60 days after any accident. Your payment's due next week. $50. The number tasted bitter. I've got that now, thanks to you. And Noah's medicine... She didn't answer. Didn't need to. There's another option. He spread the map on a water barrel, pointed to markings she didn't recognize. These are the old Spanish grants, before the territory changed hands. Your father's claim is built on the Agua Dulce grant. So Pike's been filing new surveys, shifting boundaries. But the original grants take precedence in territorial court. His finger traced lines that seemed to cut right through Pike's holdings. If someone had the original papers... Pa looked for those for years. In the wrong places. Crow folded the map. There's a reason Pike wants your land. Miss Quinn. And it isn't just water rights. What are you saying? I'm saying there's a difference between what's legal and what's right. And I'm saying sometimes a person needs to choose which one matters more. A commotion near the stockyard gate cut off her reply. Riders coming in fast, dust cloud rising like a promise of trouble. Hannah recognized the lead horse, a big bay that belonged to Deputy Sheriff Rudd. Time to go, Crow said quietly. I haven't done anything wrong. That receipt in your bodice says different. He was already moving toward the horses. Possession of evidence in a criminal conspiracy. That's how Rudd'll frame it. She followed, mind racing. You said I should keep it. I said decide fast. Now we need to move faster. He swung onto a paint mare that seemed to materialize from nowhere. Can you ride hard? Better than you'd expect. Good, because in about 30 seconds, Rudd's going to notice his morning's plan went sideways, and he's going to want someone to blame. They pushed the horses through the back streets of Lordsburg, keeping to the alleys where laundry lines and garbage heaps provided cover. Behind them, shouts erupted from the stockyard. Rudd's voice carrying over the rest, demanding to know where the Quinn girl had gone. This way. Crow led them down a wash that cut behind the Mexican quarter. There's a mission station 5 miles south. Sister Catherine runs it. She doesn't care for Pike or his men. I can't hide in a church, Hannah protested, even as she followed. I've got to get back to Noah. Not directly, they'll be watching the roads. He glanced back, assessing. You know the old copper trace, the pack trail that cuts through Devil's Backbone? Pa said it was too dangerous, unstable from all the mining. Less dangerous than meeting Rudd with that receipt. They broke from the wash onto open ground, horses stretching into a full gallop. Sister Catherine will have medical supplies. We get what Noah needs, then take the trace. Put us at your ranch by nightfall. She had to shout over the wind and hoofbeats. This isn't your fight. It is now. His laugh was wild as the wind. Besides, I've been meaning to have a conversation with Pike about property rights. Seems like good timing. The mission appeared like a mirage, adobe walls and a wooden cross. Gardens fighting the desert for every green inch. Sister Catherine met them at the gate. A stern woman with gentle hands who took one look at their lathered horses and dusty faces and asked no questions. Medical supplies, she said, leading them to a storeroom that smelled of herbs and hope. Take what you need. Hannah filled a canvas bag with willow bark, laudanum tincture, and precious vials of quinine. Her hands shook as she calculated doses, stretching possibilities against Noah's needs. The boy's consumption is advancing, Sister Catherine observed quietly. These mountains are hard on damaged lungs. There's nowhere else to go. Hannah's voice cracked. The ranch is all we have. Is it? The nun's eyes were knowing. Sometimes holding on too tight is just another way of letting go. Before Hannah could answer, Crow appeared in the doorway. Dust cloud to the north. We need to move. They said hurried thanks and mounted up, taking the narrow trail that wound toward Devil's Backbone. The path was everything Pa had warned about loose shale, crumbling edges, mine shafts that gaped like hungry mouths. But Crow navigated it like he'd been born to these hills, finding safe passage where none seemed to exist. There, he pointed to a shadowed overhang. We rest the horses, let Rudd's boys wear themselves out on the main roads. They dismounted in the shade, horses breathing hard. Hannah realized she was trembling, adrenaline finally catching up. The receipt crackled against her ribs as she breathed. Why is this piece of paper worth so much trouble? She asked. Crow pulled out a canteen, offered it to her first. Because it proves Pike's hiring guns to force families off their land, combined with the right evidence. What evidence? He was quiet for a long moment, studying the valley below. Your father wasn't the only one keeping notes. Miss Quinn, there are others, ranchers, miners, even some of Pike's own men who've grown tired of the blood. Get enough voices together, speaking the same truth. They'll be silenced, like Pa was. Maybe. He took the canteen back, drank sparingly. Or maybe Pike's reached too far. Man can only hold so much in his fist before something slips through. A hawk circled overhead, riding thermals above the baking stone. Hannah watched it, envying its freedom. You're talking about revolution. I'm talking about justice. His gray eyes found hers. Question is, what are you talking about? She thought of Noah, coughing through the nights. Of her father's journal, documenting years of small thefts and large betrayals. Of the receipt that marked her as a target now, willing or not. I'm talking about survival, she said finally. Same thing, sometimes. He stood, checking the horizon. Trail's clear. We can make your ranch by sunset if we push. They mounted up again, beginning the treacherous descent toward Quinn Land. The sun was already tilting toward evening, painting the rocks in shades of blood and gold. Somewhere ahead, Noah waited in a house that felt too empty, with debts that pressed too heavy. But Hannah had medicine now, and information, an unlikely ally whose motives remained as layered as the stone they traversed. "Crow!" she called as they navigated a particularly narrow stretch. "What you said about Pa helping you, was that true?" He didn't look back. Every word. "And this debt you're repaying, when will it be square?" Now he did turn, that almost smile playing at his lips. "Who says I'm keeping count?" The trail wound on, toward home and whatever waited there, behind them. The dust of pursuit had settled. Ahead, the first stars were beginning to show. Between them rode two people who'd started the day as strangers, bound now by paper and lead, water rights and blood debts. In the dying light, their shadows stretched long across the ancient stone, pointing the way toward a reckoning that had been coming since the first mine shaft broke the earth's trust. Pike had reached too far. Crow was right about that. The question now was whether anyone would survive the fall when his grip finally failed. The moon was a silver coin in the cloudless sky when they reached Pike's warehouse on the outskirts of Silver Mesa. The building squatted like a toad in the darkness, windows glowing with lamplight that suggested guards inside. Elias held up a hand, signaling Hannah and Noah to stay low behind the stack of mining timbers. "Two men at the front," he whispered, probably more inside. Noah's breathing was labored from the ride, but his eyes were sharp with determination. Despite Hannah's protests, the boy had insisted on coming when they'd retrieved him from the ranch. "I'm not staying behind while you risk everything," he'd said with a stubbornness that reminded her painfully of their father. "There's a loading door on the east side," Hannah pointed out. "Pa mentioned it once, said Pike never posted guards there because the lock was German-made. Impossible to pick." Elias smiled grimly. "Good thing we're not picking it." He pulled out a small vial of oil. "Apache trick. Makes metal brittle in this cold. Give it 20 minutes. The whole mechanism will crack like dry wood." They circled wide, keeping to the shadows cast by abandoned ore wagons and rusted equipment. The desert night had turned cold, their breath misting in small puffs. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled, answered by another, then silence. The loading door was exactly where Hannah remembered. Elias worked quickly, applying the oil to the lock's joints with practiced precision while they waited for it to take effect. Noah kept watch, his young face serious in the moonlight. "Someone's coming," the boy hissed. A figure rounded the corner, a woman in a dark cloak, moving with purpose. Hannah's hand found her pistol, but Elias caught her wrist. "Wait," he murmured. The woman stopped 10 feet away, pushing back her hood to reveal auburn hair and worried eyes. Ruth Pike, the banker's niece, stood before them like an apparition. "I know why you're here," she said quietly, "and I want to help." "It's a trap," Hannah whispered. "No trap." Ruth's voice was steady despite the fear in her eyes. "My uncle. What he's doing isn't right. The accidents, the foreclosures, the families driven off their land. I teach their children. Miss Quinn, I see what his greed costs." "Why should we trust you?" Elias asked, though his gun remained holstered. Ruth reached into her cloak, pulled out a key. "Because I have access to his private office. The real ledgers, not the ones he shows the territorial assessors." She paused, swallowed hard. "And because my father died in one of those accidents 5 years ago, Uncle Josiah called it tragic, then took over his claims within the week." The lock cracked with a sound like breaking bones. Elias eased the door open, revealing a cavernous space filled with crates, barrels, and the acrid smell of blasting powder. "Mother of God," Hannah breathed. "There's enough explosive here to remove inconvenient obstacles." Ruth finished. "Like the Quinn water well? Or the Martinez ranch house? Or any other property sitting on valuable land?" They slipped inside, Ruth leading them through the maze of supplies. In the far corner, behind a false wall of empty crates, she revealed a narrow staircase. "His office is up there. I'll keep watch." The climb felt eternal, each creak of wood loud as thunder in the stillness. At the top, another door, this one unlocked, Pike's arrogance assuming none would dare trespass here. The office was opulent compared to the warehouse below. A massive desk dominated the space, covered in papers and survey maps. Hannah went straight to the desk while Elias examined the maps on the wall. "Look at this," Noah whispered, pointing to a ledger. Despite his weakness, the boy's mind was sharp. Payment records. J. Martinez, removal completed. B. Cooper, accident arranged. And here, P. Quinn, pending final payment. Hannah's hands trembled as she read her father's name. Below it, a notation: water rights transfer upon confirmation of death. Payment to Messilia Jack, $500. "The bastard put a price on Pa's life," she said, voice thick. $500. Elias had found something in the maps. "Hannah, come see this." The survey showed not just current holdings, but planned expansions. Pike's empire spread like a disease across the paper, consuming family lands, water sources, entire communities. At the center, a massive planned railway depot right where the Quinn Ranch sat. "He's not just stealing land," Elias said grimly. "He's clearing the way for the railroad. Every accident, every foreclosure, it's all to make himself rich when the iron road comes through." "We need these documents," Hannah said, gathering ledgers and maps. "Evidence for the federal marshal." A shout from below froze them. Ruth's voice, raised in alarm. Then men's voices, angry and getting closer. "Back door," Elias commanded, but it was too late. Boots thundered on the stairs. They burst through First Deputy Rudd and two of Pike's hired guns. Rudd's smile was cold as winter frost. "Well, well, breaking and entering, that's prison time, even for a pretty girl." "The only criminal here is your boss," Hannah shot back, clutching the ledgers. "What ledgers?" Rudd drew his gun. "I don't see any ledgers. Just thieves who had to be shot while resisting arrest." The moment stretched taut as a bowstring. Noah stepped forward, surprising everyone. "You can't shoot us all?" the boy said, voice cracking but determined. "Someone will talk. Miss Ruth will talk." Rudd's laugh was ugly. "That uppity schoolmarm. She's Pike's blood. No one would believe." The door crashed open. Ruth stood there, and behind her, impossibly, stood Marshal Samuel Irving of the Federal Service, badge gleaming and gun drawn. "Actually, Deputy, I find Miss Pike quite believable," the marshal said dryly, "especially when she wires Santa Fe about murder and conspiracy." "You little bitch," Rudd snarled at Ruth. "Your uncle will—" "My uncle will hang," Ruth said quietly. "As will any man who pulls a trigger in this room." The standoff lasted heartbeats that felt like hours. Then Rudd slowly holstered his weapon, calculating new odds. "This isn't over," he promised. "No," Marshal Irving agreed. "It's just beginning. You boys are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder. Miss Quinn. I'll need those documents as evidence." What happened next would be debated in Salt Draw for years. The story said a lantern got knocked over in the struggle to arrest Rudd's men. Others claimed it was deliberate, someone making sure Pike's arsenal couldn't be used against innocent families. Either way, the fire started small, then exploded when it reached the blasting powder. "Run!" Elias shouted. They fled down the stairs, through the warehouse as flames began to lick at the crates. The heat built like a living thing, chasing them toward the door. Elias swept Noah into his arms when the boy stumbled, carrying him as Hannah and Ruth ran ahead. They burst into the night air just as the first explosion shook the earth, then the second. Third, a chain reaction that turned the warehouse into a pillar of fire reaching toward the stars. Windows shattered in Silver Mesa. Dogs howled. The entire sky turned orange. They didn't stop running until they reached the stand of cottonwoods a half-mile distant. Behind them, Pike's warehouse continued to burn, taking with it years of carefully hoarded instruments of destruction. "The documents," Hannah gasped. "Did we—" Marshal Irving patted his coat. "Safe and sound, though I suspect Pike's guilt is rather dramatically illustrated by other means now." Noah was coughing hard, the smoke and exertion taking their toll. Elias set him down gently, and Ruth immediately went to the boy's side with a canteen. "We need to get him somewhere safe." The schoolteacher said, "He can't take much more." "My place," Irving decided. "Federal property. Pike won't dare move against us there." As they prepared to move out, a new group of riders appeared, hard men with harder faces, led by someone Hannah recognized with a chill, Messilia Jack himself, flesh and blood and radiating menace. "Elias Crow," Jack called out, voice carrying in the night air. "Been a long time, brother." "Brother," the word hung between them like a curse. "Not long enough, Jack," Elias replied, stepping forward to put himself between the outlaw and the others. "Pike sent word, said you were interfering in his business." Jack's smile was a knife slash in the firelight. "That disappoints me. We had an understanding." "That was before I knew what kind of business it was." "Money's money. Blood's blood." Jack's eyes found Hannah. "Pretty girl. Be a shame if something happened to her. Or the boy. Touch them and I'll kill you." Elias's voice was flat, matter of fact. "Brother or not," Jack laughed. "There's the Apache in you talking. Always so dramatic." He wheeled his horse around. "Pike's offering good money. Eli, last chance to come back where you belong." "I know where I belong." "Yes," Jack said softly. "I suppose you do. See you soon, brother. Real soon." The outlaws melted back into the darkness, leaving promises of violence in their wake. Marshal Irving broke the silence. "Friends of yours." "Former associates," Elias said tightly. "It's complicated. Most things are out here." Irving helped Noah onto his horse. "Let's move. That fire's going to bring everyone in the territory running." They rode through the night, the burning warehouse painting their shadows long and strange. Ruth stayed close to Noah, making sure he stayed upright in the saddle. Hannah found herself beside Elias, questions burning as hot as Pike's destroyed arsenal. "Brother," she asked quietly. "Not by blood, by choice. Once upon a time." His profile was hard as granite in the firelight. "Jack saved my life after the cavalry left me for dead. I rode with him for 2 years before I understood the price of that salvation." "What made you leave?" "Saw him burn a homestead with the family still inside. Said they'd identified us to the law." Elias's hands tightened on the reins. "There were children." They rode in silence after that, each lost in thoughts of fire and family, justice and survival. Behind them, Silver Mesa glowed like a coal in the darkness. Ahead waited new dangers, new choices. But they had evidence now. They had an ally in Marshal Irving, unexpected help from Ruth Pike, and each other a strange alliance forged in desperation and tempered in flame. The night wind carried ash and promise in equal measure. By dawn, everything would change. Pike would know his schemes were exposed. Jack would come calling, and decisions made in darkness would face the harsh light of day. But for now, they rode together through the desert night, unlikely companions bound by shared danger and the hope that justice, however imperfect, might still prevail in a land where might too often made right. Noah coughed again, and Hannah reached over to steady him. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. It wasn't much against Pike's money and Jack's guns, but it was what they had. Sometimes, in the territory, that had to be enough. The morning after the warehouse burned, Deputy Rudd came for Noah. He brought 6 men and a court order, riding up to the Quinn Ranch like conquering heroes while the dew still clung to the sage. "By the authority of the territorial court," Rudd announced from his horse, "I'm here to take the boy into protective custody. His sister's proven herself unfit, consorting with criminals and destroying property." Hannah stood on the porch, rifle in hand but not yet raised. "That paper's not worth the ink it's written with. Rudd, everyone knows Judge Harlan is in Pike's pocket. The law's the law." Rudd's smile was all teeth. "Hand over the boy peaceful-like, or we'll take him by force. Your choice." Noah appeared in the doorway, pale but determined. "I'm not going anywhere with you." "Son, you don't get a say. You're a minor, and your sister's been running with that half-breed and destroying honest folks' property. Court says you need proper guardianship." "The court can go to—" "Noah." Hannah's voice was steady, though her heart was breaking. She'd sent word to Marshal Irving, but his response had been delayed. Without federal intervention, Rudd held all the cards. "Go with them." "Hannah, no." She knelt beside him, hands on his thin shoulders. "Listen to me. This is temporary. I'm going to fix this, but I need you safe while I do it. Can you be strong for me?" Noah's eyes filled with tears he refused to shed. "Don't let them win." "Never." She hugged him tight, whispering in his ear. "Ruth Pike teaches at the home where they'll take you. She'll watch over you. Trust her." Rudd's men dismounted, surrounding Noah like he was some dangerous criminal instead of a sick child. One reached for him roughly, and Hannah's rifle snapped up. "Touch him gentle, or I'll drop you where you stand." The man backed off, hands raised. They helped Noah onto a spare horse with exaggerated care, Rudd watching with amusement. "Smart choice, Miss Quinn. Course. Smart would have been taking Pike's offer for your land when he made it. Now," he shrugged, "now you've got nothing to bargain with." "I've got the truth." "Truth," Rudd spat in the dust. "Out here, truth is what the man with the most guns says it is. And right now, that ain't you." They rode off with Noah, the boy sitting straight-backed and proud despite everything. Hannah watched until they disappeared over the ridge, then went inside and retrieved her father's journal from its hiding place. If Pike wanted war, she'd give him one. An hour later, she met Elias at Skeleton Rock, a natural formation that provided cover and multiple escape routes. He took one look at her face and knew. They took Noah. "This morning, legal papers and everything." She handed him the journal. "Pa documented everything Pike surveys on our land. The miners who died in accidents, the water table measurements, combined with what we got from the warehouse. It's enough to hang him, if we can get it to the right people." Elias studied the entries, expression darkening. "Your father was thorough, too thorough. That's what got him killed." "Then we'd better be smart about this." Hannah pulled out a map, one of several they'd saved from the fire. "Marshal Irving's delayed in Santa Fe. Ruth sent word some emergency with the Railroad Commission. Convenient timing. Pike's reach is longer than we thought." Elias traced routes on the map. "But there's another option. Fort Stanton has a new commander, Colonel Briggs. Man's got a reputation for being incorruptible." "That's 2 days' ride through Apache territory." "Not if you know the right paths." He looked up at her. "But first, we need to make copies of everything. If Pike's men catch us." "Already done." She produced a leather satchel. "Ruth helped. We made 3 copies, one for the fort, one for the federal prosecutor in Albuquerque, one hidden where Pike will never find it." Elias smiled, the expression transforming his usually stern features. "Your father would be proud." "He'd want me to get Noah back." "We will, but Pike's expecting you to come at him direct. probably storm the children's home. Instead, we go around him, get the evidence to authorities he can't buy. A dust cloud on the horizon cut short their planning. Riders, coming fast. Could be anyone, Hannah said, but her hand found her pistol. Could be. Elias was already moving, checking sightlines. But that's Jack's gray stallion in the lead. They took positions behind the rocks, weapons ready. But as the riders approached, Hannah saw they weren't attacking. Jack rode with his hands visible, his men spread out but weapons holstered. Elias, Jack called out. I know you're up there. Come on out. Got a proposition. Not interested, Elias shouted back. Not even to save the boy. Hannah's blood went cold. Elias caught her arm before she could rise. Let me handle this, he murmured. Then louder, state your business, Jack. The outlaw dismounted, walking forward with elaborate casualness. Pike's getting nervous. That federal marshal sniffing around. His warehouse burned. Documents missing. He wants insurance. Noah's his insurance. Smart girl. Jack grinned at Hannah. Pike figures you'll trade whatever evidence you got for the boy's safety. But me, I got a different idea. Which is, you come back, Eli, ride with me again. In exchange, I guarantee the boy goes free and the girl keeps her land. Pike gets his railroad money some other way. Elias stood slowly. And if I refuse, then things get complicated. Jack's easy manner vanished. Pike's already talking about moving the boy somewhere more secure. Somewhere accidents happen to orphans all the time. You son of a... Hannah started forward, but Elias blocked her. When? He asked quietly. Tonight, midnight. The old mission at Crow's Crossing. You know the place. Jack's smile returned. Just like old times. Brother, the Messilia boys. Back together. If you harm that boy, now why would I do that bad for business? Jack mounted up. Midnight, Eli, don't be late. They watched the outlaws ride away, dust settling like ashes in their wake. Hannah turned on Elias, fury and fear warring in her eyes. You can't actually be considering this. What choice do I have? We stick to the plan. Get to Fort Stanton. In 2 days, Noah could be dead by then. He turned away. Jack doesn't make idle threats. So you'll just give up, become the killer they say you are. That stopped him. When he faced her, she saw something raw in his expression. I've been a lot of things. Hannah, some of them as bad as folks say. But that was before... Before what? Before I had something worth being better for. The words hung between them, weighted with meanings neither was ready to examine. Finally, Hannah broke the silence. There has to be another way. Maybe there is. Elias studied the horizon where Jack had disappeared. He said midnight at Crow's Crossing. That's 6 miles from the children's home. Why there? Because it's isolated, no witnesses. Or because that's where they're planning to move Noah. His eyes sharpened. Jack always did like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Understanding dawned. It's a transfer point. They'll bring Noah there before taking him. Wherever. Which means we've got 1 chance to intercept. Elias pulled out the map again. The old mine road runs parallel to Crow's Crossing. If we position ourselves here, it's still just the 2 of us against Jack's gang and whoever Pike sends. Not necessarily. He smiled grimly. Ruth Pike's not the only one in town tired of her uncle's ways. Tom Martinez's widow, Ben Cooper's brother. The other families Pike's destroyed, they've been waiting for someone to stand up. You think they'll fight? I think they'll want their children to grow up in a place where might doesn't always make right. He folded the map. I'll ride to town. Spread the word quiet-like. You take the evidence to Maria Martinez, her cousin rides mail to Fort Stanton. Even if tonight goes bad, the truth still gets out. And if Jack realizes it's a trap, then we improvise. He caught her hand, squeezed it briefly. Your father saved my life once. Hannah, let me return the favor. She wanted to argue, to insist on another plan that didn't risk him going back to the darkness he'd escaped. But Noah was counting on them, and time was bleeding away like water in the desert. "Don't you dare let them take you," she said fiercely. "Don't you dare become what they want you to be." "I won't." He released her hand, stepped back. "Meet me at Widow's Peak at sunset. We'll know by then who's with us." She watched him ride away, then turned her own horse toward the Martinez homestead. The sun climbed higher, baking the earth to iron hardness. Somewhere, Noah waited in a place that called itself protective custody but was just another kind of prison. Somewhere, Pike schemed and Jack smiled his rattlesnake smile. But between them and their victims stood two people who'd found each other in the crucible of loss and injustice. It might not be enough. Probably wasn't enough. But as Hannah's father used to say, you played the cards you were dealt, and you played them straight. The day wore on. Relentless as fate. By sunset, they'd know if anyone in Salt Draw still had the courage to stand against the powerful. By midnight, they'd know if that courage was enough. The vultures circled overhead, patient as always. In the desert, death was always just a missed step away, but so was life, stubborn and enduring, like the hidden springs that kept the old saguaros alive through decades of drought. Hannah Quinn rode toward an uncertain future, carrying truth in her saddlebags and determination in her heart. Behind her, the family homestead stood empty but not defeated. Ahead waited allies or enemies, triumph or disaster. Time would tell which way the dice would fall. The rain came unexpected, a rare blessing in the desert that turned the dust to mud and made the old wooden cabin smell of pine resin and memories. They'd taken shelter after rescuing Noah from Rudd's men, a brief, violent confrontation at Widow's Peak that left two of Pike's hired guns wounded and the rest scattered like quail. Now Noah slept fitfully on a cot near the fireplace, exhaustion and relief finally claiming him. Hannah sat beside him, watching his chest rise and fall, counting each breath like a prayer answered. "He'll be all right," Elias said quietly from where he tended the fire. "Boy's tougher than he looks." "He shouldn't have to be." She pulled the blanket higher on Noah's thin shoulders. "Children shouldn't have to be tough." "No, they shouldn't." The cabin belonged to an old trapper who'd abandoned it years ago, but the roof still held and the walls kept out most of the wind. Outside, the rain pattered steady against the pine needles, creating a curtain of sound that made the world feel smaller, safer. Hannah finally left Noah's side, joining Elias by the fire. He'd removed his coat, and she could see the bandage on his shoulder where one of Rudd's bullets had grazed him. Blood had seeped through, creating a rust-colored stain. "You need that changed," she said. "It can wait." "No, it can't." She retrieved the medical supplies from her saddlebags, the same ones she'd gotten from Sister Catherine what felt like a lifetime ago. "Take off your shirt." He looked at her steadily. "Hannah, you risked your life for my brother. The least I can do is keep you from getting blood poisoning." She softened her tone. "Please." He complied slowly, revealing a torso marked by years of survival. Scars crisscrossed his chest and back, some old and faded, others newer, but it was the deliberate pattern of burns near his heart that made her breath catch. "Apache coming-of-age ritual," he said, not meeting her eyes. "Proves you can endure pain without crying out. I was 16, trying to earn my place with my mother's people." "Did you, for a while?" His voice was distant. "Until the army came through and I had to choose sides. Guided them through the canyon passes, helped them find the winter camps, told myself I was preventing a massacre, that I could minimize the bloodshed." Hannah cleaned the wound gently, feeling the tension in his muscles. "What happened?" "What always happens when you try to stand in the middle. Both sides decided I was the enemy." He flinched as she applied the antiseptic. "The Apache marked me as a traitor. The army used me until they didn't need me anymore, then left me to die." Your father found me 3 days later. And you've been running ever since? Not running, surviving. He caught her hand, stilling its movement. Until now. The fire crackled, sending shadows dancing across the walls. Rain drummed harder on the roof. And somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled through the mountains. The world outside ceased to exist, narrowing down to this cabin, this moment, the warmth of his hand over hers. "Elias," she whispered, and wasn't sure what she was asking. He turned to face her fully, gray eyes dark in the firelight. "I've done things, Hannah, terrible things. The man Jack wants me to be, he's still in here, no matter how deep I bury him. I'm not afraid of you. You should be. But I'm not." She turned her hand in his, interlacing their fingers. "The man I see is the one who saved us in the canyon, who risked everything to help a family that wasn't his, who carried my brother to safety. That's not all I am." "No," she agreed, "but it's who you choose to be now. That matters." He studied their joined hands as if they held answers to questions he'd never dared ask. "When this is over, when Pike's dealt with and Noah's safe, what then?" "I don't know." She was honest in her uncertainty. "The ranch is all we have, but without water rights, without Pa." She trailed off, overwhelmed by the mountain of troubles waiting beyond this shelter. "Don't," he said softly, reading her thoughts. "Not tonight. Tonight we're alive. We're safe. And tomorrow's problems can wait for tomorrow." Something in his voice, in the way the firelight caught the planes of his face, made her heart skip. She became acutely aware of their closeness, of the rain-scented air and the heat from the fire, and the way his thumb traced small circles on her palm. "Don't tease me," she whispered, the words escaping before she could stop them. "My heart can't take it. Not tonight." His free hand came up to cup her cheek, calluses rough against her skin. "As you want," he murmured, and she could hear the smile in his voice, feel it in the way he leaned closer. His fingers traced along her jaw, down to where her pulse fluttered like a trapped bird. The touch was gentle, reverent, but there was something else there too, a promise, sweet as sin and twice as dangerous. She closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the sensation, by the choice being offered. When she opened them again, he was watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Hannah," he said, and her name on his lips was prayer and plea combined. She answered by closing the distance between them, her lips finding his in a kiss that tasted of rain and smoke and possibilities. His arms came around her, pulling her close, and she could feel the careful restraint in his embrace, the way he held her like something precious and breakable. When they finally parted, both breathing unsteadily, she rested her forehead against his. The fire had burned lower, casting everything in soft amber light. Outside, the storm continued its ancient rhythm. "I should check on Noah," she said, though she made no move to leave his arms. "He's sleeping sound." Elias's voice was rough. "First real rest he's had in days." She knew she should move away, should put proper distance between them. There were 100 reasons why this was foolish, the danger they still faced, the uncertainty of their future, the differences in their worlds, but his arms were warm and strong, and for the first time since her father died, she felt safe. "Stay," he said quietly, "just for a while." So she did, settling against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. He pulled a blanket around them both, creating a cocoon of warmth while the rain sang lullabies on the roof. "Tell me something good," she murmured. "Something that has nothing to do with Pike or death or any of this." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "My mother used to tell stories about the rain, said it was the earth's way of washing itself clean, starting fresh. Every storm was a new beginning." "Do you believe that?" "I didn't." His arms tightened around her, starting to reconsider. They talked quietly as the night deepened, small things, unimportant things. He told her about tracking elk through snow-silent forests, She shared memories of her mother's garden before the drought killed everything green. They built a small world of words between them, separate from the harsh reality waiting outside. Eventually, exhaustion claimed them. Hannah dozed against his shoulder, feeling safer than she had any right to. When she stirred hours later, the fire had died to embers and pale pre-dawn light was seeping through the windows. Elias was awake, watching the door with the alertness of a man who'd learned to sleep light. When he noticed her stirring, his expression softened. "Storm's passed," he said quietly. "Has it?" She wasn't entirely talking about the weather. "The rain has, anyway." He helped her sit up, immediately missing her warmth. "We should move soon. Pike's men will be looking for us." Reality crashed back Noah's illness, Pike's threats, the evidence they still needed to deliver. The stolen moment of peace dissolved like morning mist. But as she rose to check on Noah, Elias caught her hand one more time. "Hannah, what happened?" "I don't regret it." "Neither do I." She squeezed his fingers. "Whatever comes next, I'm glad we had this." Noah stirred on his cot, coughing weakly. The sound broke the spell entirely, sending Hannah into motion, checking his fever, preparing his medicine, returning to the role of protector and caregiver. But something had shifted in the night, fundamental as the earth after rain. They'd crossed a line, made a choice, claimed something for themselves in defiance of a world that seemed determined to take everything. As the sun rose over the rain-washed desert, painting the rocks in shades of gold and crimson, they prepared to face whatever came next, but they would face it together, no longer just allies bound by circumstance, but something more, something worth fighting for. The old cabin held their secret. Walls that had sheltered trappers and outlaws now witnessed to a different kind of survival. Love in a hard place, fragile as desert blooms but just as determined to live. They mounted up as the morning warmed, Noah steadier after his rest, supplies replenished from the cabin's stores. Ahead lay the trail to Fort Stanton and the hope of justice. Behind lay a night they'd carry with them, warm as flame against whatever cold winds fate might blow. "Ready?" Elias asked, checking his rifle one last time. "Ready," Hannah confirmed, her voice strong. They rode out into the new day, 3 figures against the vastness of the territory. The storm had passed, leaving the air crystal clear and sharp with promise. Somewhere. Pike schemed and Jack waited. But for now, for this moment, they had each other and the memory of rain. It was enough to start with. The rest, as Elias had said, could wait for tomorrow. The canyon walls of Mesilla Gorge rose like prison bars against the afternoon sky. Elias stood in the narrow passage, the fake dynamite bundle heavy in his hands, sand and sawdust wrapped in red paper, fuses attached to sell the illusion. Behind him, hidden in the rocks above, Hannah and Marshal Irving waited with rifles trained on the meeting ground. "You came." Jack's voice echoed off the stone as he emerged from the shadows, flanked by 4 of his men. "Starting to think you'd lost your nerve, brother." "I said I'd be here." Elias kept his voice steady, though every instinct screamed danger. "Where's Pike?" "Coming. Wanted to make sure you didn't bring friends first." Jack's eyes swept the canyon walls, missing the carefully positioned watchers. "That dynamite really die?" "Real enough." Elias hefted the bundle. "Pike wanted insurance. This is enough to bring down half the mountain." "Just like old times?" Jack smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Remember that job in Socorro you rigged the whole mine entrance, had those rangers dancing to our tune?" "I remember." The memory tasted like ash. "Also remember you shot the guards after they surrendered." "Details." Jack waved dismissively. "Point is, we were good together. Could be again." The sound of approaching horses cut through their conversation. Josiah Pike appeared at the canyon mouth, Deputy Rudd beside him, and 6 more hired guns spread out behind. Pike looked older than his years, face carved by greed and paranoia into something sharp and hungry. Mr. Crow. Pike didn't dismount, staying high on his horse like a king reviewing subjects. Jack tells me you're ready to be reasonable. Depends on your definition of reasonable. Elias shifted the dynamite bundle, making sure Pike saw it clearly. You want this, let's discuss terms. Terms. Pike laughed, the sound like rocks grinding. You're hardly in a position to negotiate, but I'm feeling generous. Join Jack's crew. Help me clear out the last few holdouts, and I'll make it worth your while. $500 and safe passage out of the territory when it's done. And the Quinns. Pike's expression hardened. The girl's been nothing but trouble. Her and that marshal, stirring up the wrong kind of attention. But the boy, he shrugged. Children are adaptable. Find him a new family back east. He'll forget all about his sister soon enough. Elias felt rage build in his chest, hot and dangerous. Above, he sensed Hannah tensing, fighting the urge to shoot Pike where he sat. But they needed Pike to admit his crimes clearly. Needed all the players revealed. What about the others? Elias asked. Martinez, Cooper, all the families who had accidents. Progress demands sacrifice. Pike's voice turned philosophical. The railroad's coming whether they like it or not. I'm just facilitating the transition, making sure the right people profit. By killing anyone in your way. Such dramatic language. Pike smiled coldly. I prefer to think of it as removing obstacles. Your friend Jack here has been invaluable in that regard. Jack preened under the praise. Told you, Eli, it's just business. Just business. Elias repeated the words slowly. Like Tom Martinez man had 3 kids. Jack, you buried him in a mine shaft while his family waited for him to come home. He was selling water to the Apache. Rudd interjected. Traitor got what he deserved. And Ben Cooper, Elias continued. What was his crime refusing to sell his grandmother's homestead? You're trying my patience. Crow. Pike's hand moved toward his coat. Are you with us or against us? This was it, the moment balanced on a knife's edge. Elias could see it all playing out, Marshal Irving's plan to let Pike fully incriminate himself. Hannah's desperate need to protect her brother. His own chance for redemption or damnation. Then Noah broke cover. The boy appeared on the ridge above Pike's men, Sister Catherine's rifle in his thin hands. He must have followed them, slipping away from Ruth's protection to join the fight he felt was his. You killed my PA. Noah's voice cracked with emotion. You sent men to collapse that tunnel on him. Noah, no! Hannah's voice rang out as she abandoned her position, trying to reach her brother. Everything happened at once. Rudd drew his gun, aiming for the boy. Elias dropped the fake dynamite and went for his pistol. Jack's men scattered for cover, and Marshal Irving's voice boomed across the canyon. Federal Marshal, everyone freeze. But Pike's men were past freezing. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions, the canyon becoming a thunderous echo chamber of lead and fury. Elias dove behind a boulder as bullets whined past, searching desperately for Noah in the chaos. The boy had dropped flat when the shooting started, showing more sense than expected, but he was pinned on open ground, nowhere to go without crossing the killing field. Cover me! Elias shouted to whoever might hear, then broke from shelter. He ran zigzag across the canyon floor, bullets kicking up dust at his heels. Jack's voice rose above the gunfire. Take him alive, he's mine! Elias reached Noah just as Rudd got a clear shot. Without thinking, he threw himself over the boy, waiting for the bullet's impact. It came, but not where expected, a graze across his ribs that spun him half around. Through the pain, he saw Hannah on the opposite ridge, her rifle smoking. Rudd was down, clutching his shoulder and cursing. Can you run? Elias gasped to Noah. The boy nodded, face pale but determined. Then run. They scrambled for the rocks, Elias shielding Noah with his body. Behind them, the battle intensified. Marshal Irving's deputies, who'd been hiding further up the canyon, had joined the fight, turning Pike's ambush into a proper shootout. They made it to relative safety behind a cluster of boulders where Hannah waited, tears streaming down her face as she grabbed Noah. "You foolish, brave, stupid boy," she sobbed, checking him for injuries. "What were you thinking?" "I wanted to help," Noah wheezed, the exertion triggering his cough. "Couldn't let you face them alone." "Family trait," Elias muttered, pressing a hand to his bleeding side. The wound wasn't deep, but it hurt like hell. Running toward danger instead of away. The gunfire was slowing now, Pike's numerical advantage crumbling against better positions and federal authority. Through gaps in the rocks, Elias could see men throwing down weapons, hands raising in surrender. But not Jack. His adopted brother appeared like a ghost from the smoke, revolver aimed steady. "Should have stayed buried. Eli, some things ain't meant for resurrection." "Put it down, Jack," Elias said tiredly. "It's over." "For Pike. Maybe. Not for us." Jack's smile was sad now. "You really think wearing a badge changes what you are? We're killers. You and me. Born to it. Bred to it. Only difference is I'm honest about it." "I changed." "No, you just got better at lying to yourself." Jack cocked the hammer. "But I'll make it clean, for old time's sake." The shot rang out, echoing through the canyon. But it was Jack who staggered, looking down in surprise at the spreading red stain on his chest. Behind him, Marshal Irving lowered his rifle. "Contrary to popular belief," the marshal said calmly, "the law does occasionally arrive on time." Jack fell to his knees, gun slipping from nerveless fingers. Elias caught him before he hit the ground, cradling his adopted brother's head. "Damn," Jack whispered, blood bubbling on his lips. "Always figured it'd be you who did it." "I'm sorry," Elias said, and meant it. "Sorry for the waste, for the choices that led them here, for the brotherhood that turned to ash." "Don't be." Jack's eyes were already glazing. "Least I went down fighting, more than Pike'll get." His gaze focused one last time. "The girl, she's good for you. Don't waste it." Then he was gone. One more ghost in a land that made them by the dozens. Elias closed Jack's eyes gently, then rose to find Pike in custody, Rudd beside him, both looking smaller without their guns and swagger. The surviving hired men knelt in a line, hands bound as Irving's deputies collected weapons. "Josiah Pike," Marshal Irving announced formally. "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, theft of land rights, and corruption of territorial officials. Deputy Rudd, you're charged as an accessory to multiple murders and kidnapping of a minor." "You've got nothing," Pike snarled. "It's my word against theirs, and I own half the judges in this territory." About that, Ruth Pike stepped out from behind the marshal, a leather satchel in her hands. "Uncle Josiah, you really should have been more careful with your correspondence, especially the letters detailing exactly how much you paid each judge." Pike's face went white. "You little—" Irving warned. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law, a federal court, where your money carries less weight than evidence." As the deputies led Pike away, he turned back one last time. "This isn't over, I'll be back. You hear me?" "No," Hannah said quietly, Noah's hand in hers. "You won't." The aftermath was almost anticlimactic. Bodies were covered and loaded for transport. The wounded were tended, Elias's ribs wrapped tight, Rudd's shoulder bound despite his protests. Evidence was catalogued and witnessed. As the sun began its descent toward the canyon walls, Elias found himself standing over Jack's body, wrestling with feelings he couldn't name. "He was right about one thing," Hannah said softly, joining him. "You are a killer, but he was wrong about the rest. You kill to protect, not for pleasure. That's all the difference in the world." "Is it enough?" She took his hand, careful of his injured side. It was enough to save my brother. Enough to stop Pike. Enough for me. Noah appeared at Elias's other side, still pale but standing straighter. Mr. Crow, thank you for everything. You've got your sister's courage. Boy, use it more wisely next time. Yes, sir. Noah smiled weakly. Though Pa always said wisdom comes with age, and courage comes with family. Smart man, your father. They stood together as the sun painted the canyon red as blood, red as the dirt that would soon cover Jack and his choices. Tomorrow there would be trials and paperwork, the slow grinding of justice finally turning in their favor. But tonight, they were alive. They were together, and sometimes in a land that took more than it gave. That was miracle enough. Come on, Marshal Irving called. Let's get out of this canyon before dark. I've had enough of dramatic showdowns for one day. As they mounted up for the ride back to Salt Draw, Elias took one last look at the canyon that had nearly become a tomb. Then he turned his horse toward town, toward whatever future waited beyond Pike's shadow. The ghosts would always ride with him, but now, perhaps he had reasons to ride faster than they could follow. The rains came 3 days after Pike's arrest, as if the land itself had been holding its breath. Hannah stood at the window of the temporary courthouse, watching water stream down the glass while inside. Ruth Pike testified against her uncle with quiet determination. The families he destroyed, Ruth was saying, her voice carrying clearly through the packed room. The Martinezes, the Coopers, the Quinns, they weren't just names in his ledger. They were my students' parents, my neighbors, my friends. Pike sat shackled at the defendant's table, his expensive suit wrinkled and his face bearing the hollow look of a man watching his empire crumble. His lawyers had abandoned him when the federal prosecutors arrived with boxes of evidence documents saved from the warehouse fire, testimonies from surviving families, and Ruth's meticulous records of his crimes. Objection. Pike's remaining lawyer protested weakly. The witness is speculating about my client's motives. Overruled. Judge Morrison, brought in from Santa Fe to ensure impartiality, declared, Continue, Miss Pike. Marshal Irving sat in the front row, his presence a reminder that federal authority now held sway in Salt Draw. Beside him, other families who'd suffered under Pike's reign listened with grim satisfaction as truth finally had its day. Hannah felt a hand slip into hers, Noah, still thin but growing stronger each day. The medicine from Sister Catherine and the clean air away from the mines had worked wonders. More importantly, the boy no longer carried the haunted look of someone waiting for the next blow to fall. How much longer? Noah whispered. Not much, she assured him. Ruth's the last witness. Then the jury decides. They'll convict him, won't they? Yes, she squeezed his hand. They will. Outside, thunder rolled across the valley. The drought had broken with Pike's power, as if the two had been connected by more than coincidence. Already, the yellowed grass showed hints of green, and the wells ran clearer. Elias appeared in the doorway, moving carefully to favor his healing ribs. He'd spent the morning helping the Martinez widow repair her roof, part of the quiet work of rebuilding that occupied the town now that Pike's shadow had lifted. Jury's going out, he reported, taking the seat beside Hannah that she'd saved for him. They waited in companionable silence as the 12 men filed out to deliberate. Around them, the courtroom buzzed with subdued conversation. 3 days of testimony had laid bare the scope of Pike's corruption, the bribes, the murders disguised as accidents, the systematic theft of land and water rights. Whatever happens, Hannah said quietly, we did what Pa would have wanted. We stood up. Your father would be proud, Elias agreed, of both of you. The jury returned in less than an hour. Guilty on all counts: conspiracy, murder, corruption, theft. Pike's face went gray as the foreman read the verdict, his hands trembling as the weight of justice finally found him. Josiah Pike, Judge Morrison intoned. You are sentenced to be hanged by the neck until dead. Sentenced to be carried out at the federal prison in Leavenworth. May God have mercy on your soul." Pike tried to speak, to protest, but the marshals were already leading him away. His reign was over, ended not by violence, but by the patient accumulation of truth and the courage of those who dared speak it. The courtroom erupted in subdued celebration tears, embraces, the quiet satisfaction of seeing justice done. Ruth Pike stood alone near the witness stand, looking lost despite her courage. Hannah approached her, Noah trailing behind. "What will you do now?" "I don't know." Ruth's smile was watery. "The school board says I can keep teaching, but the Pike name is yours to redeem." Hannah said firmly, "You saved us all." "Ruth, that's the name people will remember." "She's right," Marshal Irving added, joining them. "Takes real courage to stand against family. The town knows that." Outside, the rain had gentled to a steady patter. People drifted from the courthouse, some to the saloon to toast Pike's downfall, others to homes that finally felt secure. The widow Martinez organized an impromptu gathering at the church, a chance for the community to heal together. As they walked through the muddy streets, Elias fell into step beside Hannah. "Irving asked me something this morning," he said carefully. "Wants to know if I'd consider a permanent position, deputy marshal for the territory." And told him I'd think about it. He glanced at her. "Depends on whether I have reasons to stay in Salt Draw." Before she could respond, they were swept into the church gathering. Tables groaned under the weight of shared food. Everyone had contributed something, creating a feast from many small offerings. Children ran between the adults' legs, laughing with the abandon of those who no longer lived under threat. Sister Catherine had brought her guitar, and soon music filled the air. Traditional Mexican ballads mixed with frontier fiddle tunes and hymns, creating something uniquely Salt Draw. Even Noah was coaxed into singing, his voice thin but true. "Look at them," Ruth said wonderingly, watching families who'd been isolated by fear now talking freely. "It's like the town's waking up from a nightmare." "In a way, it is," Elias observed. "Pike held this place in a stranglehold for so long, people forgot what it felt like to breathe free." As evening deepened, Hannah found herself outside on the church steps, watching the rain fall on the thirsty earth. The Quinn Ranch well would be filling now, the water table recovering. They could rebuild, make the land profitable again. The future, which had seemed so dark, now stretched before them full of possibility. Elias joined her, bringing 2 cups of Sister Catherine's fierce coffee. "Thought you could use this." "Thank you." She accepted the cup gratefully, then asked the question that had been building all day. "Did you mean it about staying?" "I've been running a long time," he said slowly. "From what I'd done. But maybe it's time to stop running and start building something instead. The town could use a good lawman, one who understands both sides of the law." "Is that the only reason to stay?" His gray eyes found hers in the lamplight. She set down her coffee, turned to face him fully. "No, it's not." "Hannah, I know we've been through hell together. I know that can confuse things, make feelings seem stronger than they are. But this isn't just gratitude or shared danger." She took a breath, choosing honesty. "I care for you, Elias Crow, have since that first day in the canyon, though I was too proud to admit it." He was quiet for a long moment, and she feared she'd misread everything. Then he reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear with infinite gentleness. "I'm not an easy man, Hannah. I've got ghosts that'll never fully rest and skills better suited to surviving than living. But if you're willing to take that chance..." "I am." She caught his hand, held it against her cheek. "We both have ghosts. Maybe together we can help them find peace." He kissed her then, there on the church steps with the rain falling and the sound of celebration drifting through the windows. It was different from that desperate night in the cabin, slower, deeper, a promise rather than stolen comfort. "Hey, sis," Noah's voice broke them apart. The boy stood in the doorway, grinning despite his attempt at a stern expression. "Mrs. Martinez has quit sparking on the church steps and come help serve dessert. Mind your manners. Noah Quinn." Hannah scolded, though she was smiling. "Yes, ma'am." He darted back inside, but not before adding, "About time, though. Even Sister Catherine's been taking bets on when you two would figure it out." Elias laughed, a real laugh that transformed his face. "Smart kid." Too smart for his own good sometimes. But Hannah was laughing too, feeling lighter than she had in months. They returned to the celebration hand in hand, no longer hiding what was between them. The community welcomed it with knowing smiles and good-natured teasing. In a land that had seen too much death, new love was cause for joy. As the evening wound down, Marshal Irving approached Elias. "Made your decision about that deputy position?" Elias looked at Hannah, at Noah helping clear tables, at the town that was slowly healing itself. "Yes, sir. I'll take it. Someone needs to make sure Pike's kind doesn't get another foothold here." "Good man." Irving clapped him on the shoulder, careful of the healing ribs. "Report to my office Monday morning. We'll get you sworn in proper." Later, as they walked home through the rain-washed streets, Noah between them chattering about plans for the ranch, Hannah felt something she'd thought lost forever: hope. Real solid hope that tomorrow could be better than yesterday. "We'll need to dig new irrigation channels," Noah was saying. "And maybe plant that eastern field with something besides scrub grass. Mr. Elias, do you know anything about farming?" "Not much," Elias admitted. "But I'm willing to learn." "We'll all learn together," Hannah said. "That's what family does." The word hung in the air between them, weightier than the casual way she'd said it. Family. Not just her and Noah anymore, but something larger, something being built one careful day at a time. At the ranch, the sight that greeted them brought tears to Hannah's eyes. The well, which had been dangerously low for months, was nearly full, water clear and life-giving, reflecting the stars that peeked through the breaking clouds. "Pa would have loved this," Noah said softly. "He would have," Hannah agreed. "He always said water would return to those who waited with faith." They stood together in the dooryard, three people who'd found each other in the crucible of loss and emerged stronger. Tomorrow there would be work, endless work of rebuilding, replanting, creating something worthwhile from Pike's ruins. But tonight, with the rain gentle on the roof and water in the well, they were home. They were safe. They were family. It was more than enough. It was everything. 6 months had passed since Pike's hanging, and Salt Draw barely resembled the fear-choked town it had been. The autumn sun painted the valley gold as folks gathered beside the newly christened Well of Two Roads, the Quinn family well that had become a symbol of the community's rebirth. Elias adjusted his deputy marshal's badge, still not entirely comfortable with its weight. Beside him, Hannah directed the placement of tables for the harvest celebration, her hair pinned up but rebellious strands escaping in the breeze. She caught him watching and smiled, that particular smile that still made his heart skip after all these months. "Deputy Crow," Noah's voice carried across the yard. The boy had grown 2 inches and filled out considerably, no longer the skeletal child they'd fought to save. "Riders coming from the east. Looks like that Apache delegation you were expecting." Elias shaded his eyes, studying the approaching group. 3 riders, moving with the easy grace of people born to horseback. At their head rode Joseph Broken Arrow, a man Elias had known in another life, when he'd worn different allegiances like ill-fitting clothes. "Easy, folks," Elias called out, sensing the town's tension. "They're here by invitation." It had been Hannah's idea, the water-sharing agreement that would have been unthinkable under Pike's rule. The Apache bands that moved through the territory needed reliable water sources. The town needed peace and trade. The well of two roads would serve both purposes. Joseph dismounted, his weathered face carefully neutral as he assessed the gathered townspeople. His eyes found Elias, and something passed between them, acknowledgement of old wounds, older debts. "Elias Crow," Joseph said formally, or should I say Deputy Marshal Crow now. "Just Elias to you, old friend." He stepped forward, extending his hand. After a moment's hesitation, Joseph took it. "This is the woman who sent the invitation." Joseph gestured to Hannah. "I am?" Hannah moved to stand beside Elias, chin raised, meeting Joseph's gaze steadily. "The well has water enough for all who come in peace." Peace. Joseph tasted the word like something foreign. "Your people have short memories. It wasn't so long ago they hunted us like animals." "Some did," Hannah acknowledged. "And some of yours raided our homes, but that was yesterday. We're talking about tomorrow." Ruth Pike approached with a water bucket and ladled the traditional offering of hospitality. She'd kept her family name but transformed it through service, teaching Apache children alongside Mexican and Anglo ones in the expanded school. Joseph accepted the water, drank deeply, then passed it to his companions. "Good water," he pronounced. "Clean, no alkali taste. It's limestone filtered." Noah piped up, unable to contain his enthusiasm. "Goes down through 3 rock layers before it hits the main aquifer. We tested it at different depths." "Noah," Hannah said gently, "let our guests drink before you lecture them on geology." But Joseph was almost smiling. "The boy has knowledge. That's good. Knowledge keeps people alive out here." The ice broke slowly, like spring thaw. Townspeople who'd initially hung back began drifting closer. The Apache delegates examined the proposed map, marked watering times, shared grazing areas, trade possibilities, everything documented, everything agreed upon by both sides. "This could work," Joseph said finally. "But there will be those on both sides who resist. Old hatreds die hard. Then we'll handle them together." Elias said, "That's what the law is for, protecting agreements, keeping the peace." "You've changed. Elias Crow, once you guided soldiers to our camps." "Once I was lost," Elias replied simply. "Now I'm finding my way home." The signing took place as the sun reached its zenith. Marshal Irving had come from the territorial capital to witness it, bringing official seals and the weight of federal recognition. As Hannah and Joseph made their marks on the agreement, a cheer went up from the crowd. "History, folks," Irving announced. "You're witnessing history. First official water-sharing compact between Apache bands and a territorial town. May it be the first of many." The celebration that followed was tentative at first, two peoples feeling their way toward something new. But food has a way of breaking down barriers. Soon, Apache fry bread was being traded for Mexican tamales. Stories were being exchanged in 3 languages, and children were discovering that games are universal. Elias found himself translating between Joseph and the town council, his mixed heritage finally an asset rather than a burden. He caught Hannah watching him with pride and something deeper love that no longer needed to hide. As afternoon wore on, more riders appeared on the horizon. Elias tensed, hand moving to his gun, then relaxed as he recognized them. The Martinez widow, the Cooper clan, other families from outlying ranches all coming to witness this new beginning. "Look at that," Sister Catherine said, appearing at his elbow with her usual ability to materialize when least expected. 6 months ago, these people would have fought up at the sight of Apache riders. Now they're sharing food and water like neighbors. "Things change," Elias said. "People change," she corrected, "when given the chance and the choice. You're proof of that, Elias Crow." The sun was setting when Joseph prepared to leave. His people would camp nearby tonight, returning in the morning to finalize trade arrangements. As he mounted up, he paused beside Elias. "The woman Hannah Quinn, she's strong, sees far. You chose well." She chose me, Elias corrected. Still not sure why. I am? Joseph's rare smile appeared. She sees who you're becoming, not who you were. That's the gift of the right woman. They see us as we could be and make us want to be worthy of that vision. After the Apache delegation left, the town's celebration continued. Lanterns were lit, instruments appeared, and soon music filled the cooling air. Elias found himself pulled into a Virginia reel, Hannah laughing as he stumbled through the steps. For a man who can track a bird across bare rock, you're terrible at dancing, she teased. Never had much cause to learn, he admitted, but he was smiling. Willing to teach me, though. Always, she said softly, and they both knew they weren't just talking about dancing. Later, as the party wound down, Marshal Irving approached them. Got a telegram this afternoon. Federal government's approved funding for a proper territorial courthouse in Salt Draw. They want someone with experience to oversee the transition. He looked meaningfully at Elias. Interested in a promotion? Elias glanced at Hannah, who nodded encouragement. We've got roots here now, she said. Might as well let them grow deep. Then yes, Elias told Irving. I'm interested. Good man. We'll make an honest lawman of you yet. Irving clapped him on the shoulder and wandered off to find another drink. The celebration was ending, families drifting home under stars that seemed especially bright. Noah had fallen asleep on a bench, exhausted from helping everywhere at once. Elias gathered the boy up gently, carrying him as they walked back to the ranch house. He's getting heavy, Elias noted. He's getting healthy, Hannah corrected. Finally growing like a boy should. At the house, they tucked Noah into bed, then stood on the porch, reluctant to let the day end. The Well of Two Roads reflected moonlight like a silver mirror, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote sang to its pack. Pa would have loved today, Hannah said softly. Seeing peoples come together, water shared freely, the town rebuilding itself on trust instead of fear. He'd be proud of you, Elias said, of what you've built from his foundation. We've built, she corrected. None of this happens alone. They stood in comfortable silence, her hand in his, watching the night settle over their valley. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There were still those who resented change, who preferred Pike's clarity of violence to the messy work of peace. But tonight, they'd proven something important, that different peoples could choose cooperation over conflict, that water could bind rather than divide. Elias, Hannah said eventually, that first day in the canyon, when you saved us from those outlaws, did you imagine we'd end up here? No, he admitted. I thought I was repaying a debt to a dead man. Didn't expect to find a future in the process. Life's funny that way. Takes you down roads you never planned to travel. She turned to face him. I'm glad you stayed. Glad you chose to build something instead of just passing through. So am I. He pulled her close, marveling at how natural it felt now. Though I should warn you, I'm still learning this settling down business. Might make mistakes. We'll make them together, she promised. That's what partners do. A sound from the well caught their attention. One of the Apache riders had returned, filling water containers for their camp. He nodded respectfully to them, then disappeared back into the darkness. Tomorrow, that would be normal. Today, it was still miraculous. Come inside, Hannah said finally. Dawn comes early, and there's winter wheat to plant if we want a spring harvest. As they entered the house that had become home, Elias paused to look back at the land spread beneath the stars. The Well of Two Roads stood at the center, patient and enduring, ready to serve all who came with honest need. Around it, Salt Draw slept peaceful, no longer under the shadow of one man's greed. They'd fought for this, bled for it, nearly died for it. But more importantly, they'd chosen to live for it, to build something worth preserving. In a territory where might had always made right, they'd found another way. The road ahead wasn't certain. The territory was still wild, still dangerous, still full of those who'd rather take than trade. But they'd face it together, Hannah and Elias, Noah growing strong, Ruth teaching children to see beyond color and custom, Sister Catherine tending bodies and souls alike, Marshall Irving bringing a law that served justice rather than power. It wasn't paradise. It was better than that. It was home, hard-won and honestly earned. And in the morning, they'd continue the work of making it better still. One shared well, one kept promise, one act of trust at a time. The door closed softly on a day that had changed everything and nothing. Outside, the stars wheeled on, indifferent and eternal. But beneath them, beside a well that had once run dry, hope flowed clear and deep as underground rivers, promising that tomorrow's harvest would be worth today's planting. In the territory of New Mexico, in the year 1878, that was miracle enough for anyone. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed following Hannah and Elias on their journey through the harsh but beautiful landscape of the Old West. If you're listening to this tale, I'd love to know where you are, whether you're driving through your own desert roads, relaxing at home, or perhaps working through your day. Please share your thoughts in the comments below and let me know what part of the story touched you most. If you enjoyed this Western romance, please subscribe to Wild West Night for more tales of love, courage, and redemption in the American frontier. Don't forget to like this video and hit that hype button to help more listeners discover these stories of the untamed West. Until next time, partners, keep riding toward your own horizon.